thank you all for coming in. I'm just going to quickly go down our agenda for today. We're going to go down and do the first 30 minutes, just doing questions with the panelists, and then give about 10, 15 minutes for Q&A afterwards, and then the last 10 to 15 minutes you guys can eat. Farzana, one of our speakers, is going to be hosting a meet and greet. We've given out a number of books you can get signed, or you can also buy. She has her book for purchase as well here. So with that, I'll just get started with a small intro for those that don't know me. My name is Eric Tien. I'm a full-time MBA student, my second year, currently co-president of AMSA, the Asian Student Management Association. And before coming to MBA, I was actually part of KPMG's Asian Pacific Islander Network, which is their affinity group, and worked for about 3 years there, where we really focus on creating a community for our Asian Americans as well as our allies, and then work together to throw some events during COVID to keep our community engaged. So with that, I'll just give a little time for our speakers to do a short intro. Nicolin, how about you start, given that you're calling in from Zoom? So,
sure thing. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Nicolin. I am currently a consultant at Bain & Company. I graduated from MIT Sloan in 2021, and I've been at Bain for now about 3.5 or 4 years, started before my MBA and returned. I'm now the events lead for Asians at Bain in the Los Angeles office, and actually helped to co-found the chapter back in 2018. So happy to speak to any ERG questions you might all have.
Cool, thank you. And then we can just go down the line.
Yeah, sure. My name's Andy Kwan. Graduated from UC Santa Barbara in 2008 and have been working in the audit practice of KPMG since then. So I've been with the firm for over 14 years now, primarily in the Los Angeles office. I think I might have the distinction of being the lone person here who neither has nor are currently working towards a graduate degree. So, I also serve as the co-lead to the Asian Pacific Islander BRG network for the KPMG Los Angeles office, similar to what Eric did for New York. So just trying to keep the community connected as much as possible, holding events, engaging with everyone, and talking about important topics.
Hi, everyone. Very nice to meet you. My name is Farzana Nayani. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. I have my own firm based here in Los Angeles. I've been doing the work for over 20 years, and I want to also highlight my ethnic background is my mom's from the Philippines, my dad's from Pakistan, and I have roots in India. My grandmother's from India, so just want to also represent because I see a lot of amazing, diverse faces in the room, and really appreciate the group coming together.
Hi, everyone. My name is Holly. I'm currently with Disney in Kids Content Analytics. I was co-chairman of our API Employee Resource Group. I've shifted since starting my MBA here, and now I function as more of an executive advisor. And so pretty much what we do very similarly is we create this network of support for our Asian American employees. Specifically through 2021 with the Asian hate crimes, it was really critical that we held that then. And then we also function as a focus group / advisory group to our executive leadership, like Bob Chapek and our CDO, to make sure that they are aware of what's going on with employees and what we need. And we kind of function as that in between the two.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Right off, I just want to start off the questioning by really, given that we're all working full-time, or you guys are all working full-time, why initially did you guys become involved with your ERGs? And, what does being part of that ERG or BRG really mean to you? We can start off with Nicolin.
Sure. I, like I said, helped co-found LA Asians at Bain, and what we were seeing back in 2018 was that there was a huge lack of leadership of Asian descent, and so we wanted to sort of get at the bottom of that. There was a lot of sort of questions about whether or not, it was needed, so to speak, about having an Asian, affinity group, because we were doing well in recruiting and sort of the associate levels. We were seeing this huge gap between folks who were starting as associates and how they were moving through the company. And so we wanted to sort of help address that. And also sort of for my own benefit, try to build a network of folks that I could rely on to sort of chat through these issues and sort of build a community around me that I would feel comfortable having just throughout my career at Bain.
For me, the big thing that I really want to get involved with was just to lend Asian American professionals a voice in the business place. As Asian Americans, we have our own unique set of challenges, and oftentimes we don't really want to talk about them. That's kind of in our nature, right? It's stuff that I went through when I was a young professional, and I really want to just be able to have this platform, get people together, and deliver the message that, hey, we go through struggles as well. We want that promotion. We feel discriminated against. We feel uncomfortable. And for me, the biggest thing is if we get enough people together and talk about these issues, people will feel more comfortable talking about them so that real change can actually happen. And, the people at the top who probably don't look like us, don't understand our background, can get a better understanding of what we're going through and open up more opportunities for Asian Americans.
I got involved with supporting employee resource groups because I really wanted to help and support people who are underrepresented in the workplace. And the best way to do that would be for folks to gather and build community. And not only is it there for Asian Pacific Islanders, but also the Black community, LGBTQ plus community, veterans, parents, etc. So I just really believe in them. I think they're a huge, powerful vehicle. And I also wrote a book, as was mentioned, called The Power of Employee Resource Groups, to help people find their way through how to operate them more efficiently, and also what current events are affecting our ERGs today.
So for me, it's a little bit different. I didn't actively choose to get involved in the employee resource group. It was, starting, it was quite small. I'm one that I never really talked about my background before. So my mom, she was born and raised in Cambodia. So she has a very dark, traumatic history that we don't often talk about. And my dad, he's from the Philippines. And so growing up, I was in the dark with a lot of my family history, don't speak another language besides English. So I've always felt like I didn't quite belong. So I got involved through the employee resource group because I had this executive mentor who led my mentorship program. And she was like, Holly, we're starting this. I need you in this group. So I was like, okay. I just went with it. And then I really got to see kind of that community and what we were trying to do. And especially during that critical time where there were all these Asian hate crimes, employees needed support. Employees were expressing invisibility in the workplace, trouble growing, getting promotions. A lot of our Asian Americans were kind of stuck in these analyst or technical roles. And so really after kind of surveying and seeing those needs and seeing how I could help bridge that gap to leadership and hike up that message. And I guess it's being the voice, sort of like Andy mentioned, to cultivate that and really kind of do something about it. Whereas before it was sort of like, everyone was just sort of thinking, Asians, you just keep your head down and keep doing your work, and to try to just shift that whole narrative and kind of make a movement out of it. So it's been honestly probably the most rewarding thing I've done in my 10 years at Disney. And I'll say that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great to hear. I know that we've touched a lot upon, what type of vehicle ERGs serve as. I just want to kind of go back and kind of set a baseline on what we think ERGs, why they exist in the workplace in the first place, or also what are their main objectives as well, and what that means, at each different corporation that we work at. Nicolin.
Sorry, is a question, sort of like what is the ERG sort of meant to do at the workplace, and what we hope for them to sort of be for us?
Yeah, specifically what you see.
I would say maybe like three key things. One is sort of, how do we support each other to become better leaders and to sort of build up our careers with each other and sort of use each other as a support group. So I think that is sort of one piece. Two is, separate but related pieces, how can we strengthen our community and create these bonds, these social bonds, and sort of create a workplace where we can feel comfortable and authentic around our coworkers and at our workplace without having to feel, like we are other. And then three is sort of, how can we showcase, an external thought leadership and a voice of the Asian American in the workplace, and sort of dispel a lot of the assumptions that folks might have about, what an Asian at the workplace sort of looks like. And so for me, that's probably like the three key things I would highlight.
And layering on top of that, I think that sharing stories with younger professionals is such an important aspect of the BRGs. As you're all aware, the promotions plateau at a certain point. That's just how it is. There's a lack of representation of minorities, Asian Americans, certainly included in that at a firm like KPMG, partner managing director level. So part of what we do is we hold a lot of events where we get the younger professionals connected with Asian American partners and managing directors so they can share their stories either in a panel format or a sit down or via mentorship program, just so that they know the struggles that they went through are similar to what those partners and MDs are, and that really that there is an opportunity to get there. You don't have to start and think, oh, well, no one up there looks like me, so I don't have an opportunity to get to those highest levels.
I want to, continue the great comments and ask the crowd here, who here has heard of an employee resource group before today? Okay, amazing. And have you heard of a business resource group? So a BRG. So there's employee resource groups, which are employee based, and then business resource groups are there to really serve the functions of the business. You may also hear them called affinity groups, maybe if you work in higher ed or some other type of forum. So you'll see these terms used, and they really are based around demographics. And as was already said, it's about representation, it's around community building, but it's also around your sense of self and a sense of belonging. So think about it, when you enter the workplace, you may not know too many people, maybe you just start with just a couple people in your department or your direct supervisor. Where are you gonna go? And these ERGs are a great way to meet amazing people and develop friendships, and then also create that networking so that there's the ability to reach beyond your immediate and really make a name for yourself, but also get to know others and the company better.
Thank you for clarifying that. I was like, that's learning to me, because at Disney, we call them BERGs, Business Employee Resource Groups. So they serve both functions. I think similarly to what everyone said, pretty much what we do is provide that support network for employees. We share experiences, things that we can all relate to. Themes that have often come up are, again, the feeling of invisibility, not being seen as a leader, the biases that we're quiet Asians, we don't have anything to say. So really being able to kind of talk to folks and share those experiences and know that, you're probably just being respectful because that's how you were raised and taught, not necessarily that you're quiet and you don't have anything to say. And being able to kind of be that voice and take that up to, the folks that need to hear that, which is typically our executive leadership in HR, diversity, what have you. And then also helping the business, it's really the advisory consultancy group to survey content before it gets released. Is this authentic? Is it representative? Is this reflective of how society is today? And so we also provide that too, where we might watch content, give feedback, such as for Raya and The Last Dragon, and other content that we have coming up. So really it's kind of like twofold for us, or at least for me in the Disney side.
Awesome. And then I know we talked a lot about like inclusion, making people feel represented. Just, based on my own experience of being part of APIN, one of the things that I struggled with was that with, Asia just being such a huge continent, having so many distinct different cultures, like how do you guys maintain that representation, that feeling of inclusion for so many different people that may have these different sets of like cultures and experiences? Nicolin?
Yeah, I can start. I think, and it's definitely not perfect from my standpoint. I think two things. One is sort of like, how can we, create this grassroots effort is what it, mostly looks like in the LA office, and sort of like, how do we engage folks and make sure that they have a platform to sort of come out and, discuss the things they want to discuss and put on events that are, not just East Asian or not just South Asian. Like, how do we kind of get folks across the office? And luckily for us, we're only about, 175, 200 folks or so. So you actually get to know a lot of different people, and just, people who want to get involved in Asians at Bain, just having them engage more and sort of share how they want to present, their cultures and celebrate the things that they want to celebrate. So that's kind of one aspect. And I think two is sort of like helping on the recruiting side, sort of paint the picture of like, what does diversity across even like the Asian continent look like? And how do we, again, dispel some of those assumptions across some of these groups? Again, we don't probably have a perfect process there yet, but we are trying to sort of get a wide variety of like viewpoints and folks who are, represented in our office.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging because the outside world sees Asians as a monolith, when very clearly Asian is not. It's so diverse just within Asian. So the biggest thing we try to focus on is education, just to focus on how there is so much diversity within Asians. And one of the things that we do every year is a Lunar New Year celebration. And we like to go through a couple different Asian cultures. So we don't try to just focus on East Asian or South Asian. We try to get a more diverse set. So last year we had someone cover what Lunar Year means in Vietnam, in Japan, and in the Philippines, just to get, a different flavor for how, something as universal as New Year's is celebrated so differently by all these different cultures, even just within Asia.
I think in addition to planning events for others, there's also education we have to do amongst ourselves. So for example, there could be colorism in our community where we favor light-skinned people in each of our communities, which is difficult, but something we can talk about. The mixed race community is also something that isn't talked about. Transracial adoptees are very, very common in the Asian community, but how are folks received, and how can we support people learning about their identities, because they may not have grown up in an Asian or Pacific Islander household and may feel white or other. So some of those things are the finer, complex points in addition to what has already been said. I think in addition to that, there's also been the unfortunate rise in anti-Asian racism. And that has been a rallying cry for all of us to come together. So despite our differences, we've really seen a lot of bonding and community work and solidarity across the community and among communities because of it.
Just giving an answer that's kind of different from what everyone touched on. For us, for our employee resource, group area, May, Asian Pacific American Heritage Month is typically our biggest time of the year where we celebrate. And so we have this advisory council that comes together, and whenever we're doing any programming or events, we make sure that kind of each area is represented. So is this East Asian, Southeast Asian, South Asian, and they've gotten a lot better. Again, it's not perfect, kind of like Nicolin said, but I think we're all just trying our best to make sure that, we're being more representative outside of just East Asian, which is the most depicted typically.
Awesome, thank you. And then I just want to take a step back. I know we spoke a lot about why ERGs exist, specifically Asian ERGs, and like how they can help raise the voices of the community. Just based on like having our panelists all have leadership positions, I just want to hear, what do you guys think makes an ERG effective? Like what makes the ERG be able to hit those objectives that you guys mentioned? And maybe we can start with Holly this time and work the way back.
Okay, so for us, I think what we did was, I guess, what makes an ERG effective? It's clarity and passion, authenticity, to make sure it comes from the right place. So we put together this framework, REV. So first pillar was representation, making sure that we had representation in front of the camera with our talent, because we're Disney, right? It's all about our content. And then also behind the camera, and making sure that they're not just funneled at these entry-level roles, that there's actually a talent pipeline and that there's growth and support. Again, not perfect, but work in progress. The second pillar was education. So it's really about awareness and, just getting people to share their stories so that, folks outside our community are aware. They know that we don't have, zero struggle. We just kind of have this mentality of keep your head down and keep working, even when you're sick, even when you're tired. There's kind of this resilience that you have. And just being able to talk about and express when you need help and being honest about that, it's not a bad thing. It's not weakness. It's honest. And then the third pillar was visibility. So again, there's this theme of Asians being invisible in the workplace. So what do we do about that? And really, we're using our ERGs to collectively support one another and then amplify and raise all of those voices so that the organization actually hears us and what we want and what we need and how we need things to be, and to not just ignore us as the focus might be on some of the louder ERGs or other employees. We want to make sure that we're not ignored. And again, our voices matter and mean something.
So in my book, there's a model called the 5 Ps of ERGs, and I talk a lot about purpose and the people involved, processes. I also talk about the priorities of the ERG and planning. And some of what we're hearing already demonstrates how when you have those things nailed down or defined, they can really be supportive of the ERG's plan and goals. I think the pitfall sometimes what happens is that people don't take the time and we end up just doing event after event and something that's like reactive, and that can be really difficult and can take us off track. So that's a framework I suggest as well.
For me, the thing that makes BRGs, ERGs most effective is when members are engaged. And the way I like to think about that is when people think of these BRGs as essential and not extracurricular. Because it's not necessarily part of the job that you get paid for, there's a tendency, whether you're in a leadership role or just a member, that because it's not part of your work, you try to fit it in around your work. There's all sorts of excuses that are made. So sometimes attendance can be poor because they think, oh, well, I can get a couple extra billable hours in as opposed to going to this event. So in reality, people should view it as an essential part of their job, right? It's not just about doing the work and being productive, but it's about having a better overall experience, and being a part of a BRG is that. So a lot of effort is made to make sure that members are engaged, that they're attending events, that they're taking advantage of all the resources that we provide. And also, too, another way that I measure success is our ability to get allies to go to our events, especially at the partner and management level, so that they can see all the things that we're doing, and really just for education purposes, so they can understand the challenges that we're going through and the things that we're seeing, so they have a better understanding of why it's so essential what we do with these BRGs.
Totally. One last point to add, because, we're consultants, we love using our data, we love using our metrics. So I think a big part of the effort in trying to understand whether or not these efforts are successful is trying to come up with a set of metrics that we can follow and track. For example, I think we have a worldwide employee survey, so we advocated to have breakdowns for how sort of the Asian American population was sort of how they were reacting in terms of, NPS. Do you feel included? Do you feel like you have someone who is in your corner and mentoring you and sort of bringing you up in your career? And then we also sort of have new metrics in place with our recruiting teams to kind of understand how those kind of pieces are going. And then also to sort of track how folks are sort of moving up in the organization. Are we seeing a greater representation in management than we had 3 years ago? So trying to advocate for those pieces of data and having like concrete pieces to sort of see how the progress is going, I think has also been effective for us to have conversations around and to sort of push the discussion forward as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And then definitely like, I want to also hear kind of on the flip side of the conversation. You know, we talked about what makes an ERG effective. As leaders of your guys' respective ERGs, you know, what has been some of the most challenging aspects or areas that you guys have encountered while trying to lead an ERG or kind of had to work through? And we can start with Holly again.
Most challenging. Oh my gosh. There's been a lot of challenging things for us at Disney. I think right now I feel like Disney's feeling a lot of pressure from every which side, right? There's so much that's going on in the world, like crime after crime, hate crime, every different group. And so they're pressured as to, do they release a statement for everything that happens? They also, let's be honest, have a conservative base, right? That they also don't want to alienate. So they're kind of put into this, you know, conflicting position. So I think one of the most challenging things for us was just really getting them to understand, because I think after a while, our executive leadership or that team just really hears like problem after problem after problem, and they don't know what to do. So there's this level of exhaustion. So I think it's, there's a lot of challenge, I would say, but one is making sure it gets its proper attention and people are actively listening and we're communicating really clearly in a way that is authentic so that they see and care and choose to do something and not just think of it as like, oh, well, it's just another thing. Like, all right, let's just like release our package statement and then like move on to the next part. So making sure it stays this strong movement and not just like a trending topic. Like we're going to address it right now and then it's going to be over and then we're just on to the next thing. So it's maintaining, I guess, the momentum and sustaining it to make sure that we're achieving what we want and we continue to have the ears of the top and then also the voices from below.
I think adding to that, there have been a lot of tragedies in the news and a lot of responses that are needed by companies or by leaders. And a lot of the time people turn to the employee resource groups naturally who are part of the communities to carry the message forward or to educate others. And that's very stressful and can be a lot of labor and energy on people who are already marginalized or underrepresented. So I think that the thing that I'm starting to talk to employee resource groups about is how to draw the line around that, have healthy boundaries, pace yourself, do what you can, take breaks, take turns, and don't feel like you need to carry everything on your shoulders and it has to be done immediately. I think that's something we all can learn just with all the news that we're consuming, just to try to pause sometimes. So as employee resource group leaders, we're doing that not only for ourselves, but others. And sometimes we put others first and it can be the cycle that we get into. So I find that a challenge that I'm noticing a lot among various groups.
One of the challenges that I've had, you know, having been in my role for 4 years, is coming up with new and unique content for our members. Because, you know, every year we go through a similar cycle of things. You know, we have Asian Heritage Month, Lunar New Year, or kickoff event. So sometimes it feels like you're kind of stuck in a rut, you're kind of fatigued. So we're constantly trying to get new ideas in on how to mix things up, do something different to really engage with our group. And a lot of times that comes from the younger professionals because they have different perspectives and new ideas. Like one of the things that we did that I thought was amazing was we did a joint event with our Pride group, our LGBTQ community. And what we did was there's this individual who's a transgender man and who is also Asian American. So we got, I forget the pronoun, but we got that individual, the mom, and a close friend to come and speak to a joint event so that we kind of get this interesting cross-section of the Asian American community and LGBTQ, something that I never really thought about. And that was such an enriching, insightful panel that we got to witness. And that was because we had young, passionate professionals being able to come up with an idea that none of us would have been able to.
Yeah, not too much to add there, but I think for me personally, what's difficult, and this goes back to what Andy had said before, is just getting folks to be engaged. Especially since there's a lot more hybrid going on in the workplace, it's hard to get, the group of folks that across the board can give you the right representation and, share ideas and sort of speak to what they want to see from the program. So just, people are busy. We have, very busy corporate jobs. And how do you get people to sort of have this at the forefront of their minds, and just getting folks to engage in the right way and make sure that the program is sort of moving forward, and that all in the face of like folks kind of moving in and out of offices, folks leaving the company. And particularly for a small office like LA, it's kind of particularly challenging to make sure that we have the same person sort of like leading the charge, 4 or 5 years down the line. Like that's been a difficulty for sure.
Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing that. And I know we're coming up to time, so I just want to ask one last question, kind of like on a lighter note, but I know we've spoken about a lot of initiatives and events, but I just want to hear from each one of you, what is a one event or initiative that you guys really enjoy or look forward to every year? And we can start with Nicolin.
Sure. Actually, a new event that we had this year was super fun. It was called Curry Roulette. And I don't know where the roulette part came in, but we had curries from all different, types of, we had Japanese, Thai, Indonesian, Indian, and we just had a bunch of curry and, sat around just chatting about our cultures, what we sort of like knew about the curries and the folks who brought them in and decided to bring in. So that was like a fun sort of like social and like open way to sort of one, create the community in the office amongst ourselves, but then two, also create like an educational opportunity across the office to showcase like, Asian and even curry is not, one monolithic thing. It's something that is enjoyed across different cultures, and we can find like ways to connect ourselves, but we are distinct and different and unique in many different ways.
A little generic, but I really enjoy our annual kickoff event, which takes place every October, November. And that's just to get everyone together, go through the things that we've accomplished in the past year and what we're planning to do for the future, over the next 12 months. And this past year was particularly important to us because it was the first time that we did an in-person kickoff event in 3 years because of COVID. So there was a lot of nerves about, well, how many people are going to show up? Do we do virtual? Do we do in person? Do we do some sort of hybrid combination? And through the efforts of my steering committee, we actually had 150 people show up in person. It was by far the largest in person that we'd ever done in the office. And it was just incredible to see that there's so much drive and passion that people were willing to come to this, be in person, get together, meet everyone. So it was just such a resounding success that got me really excited.
I was able to speak at and attend an event by a major insurance company, and they had probably around 150, 200 people in person, and then they broadcast it to 3 campuses. But they invited other ERGs, so it was hosted by the Asian Pacific Islander ERG. They had all of the other ERGs, and their theme always related to food. Food's always a great draw. It was around teas. So they had teas from around the world, and then everyone got to try all these different teas and snacks, and it was just a lot of fun and educational and business oriented. So by far is one of the best memories I have so far of so many of the ERGs that I've seen.
I think for me, my sort of passion project is a short film that we released, completely employee driven. You can look it up on YouTube. It's called A Message from Your Asian American Colleagues, posted by Disney. And it was just a massive undertaking. I think we felt that there was exhaustion hearing story after story, heartbreak after heartbreak. And so what we did was we put out to our employees this message to say, hey, we're asking you these questions. Please submit yourself, share your stories. And then we borrowed 2 producers from Nightline in our news division, and we had them just stitch together this kind of video so that we could bring this to our executive leadership team and make sure that it got their ears and their attention, and they, it spoke to them in a way that really only art and stories could do, not just, lecture, information, what have you. And so we were, able to do that. They produced this awesome, I think 5 or 6 minute film. And then that was debuted internally to just get the message across. We debuted it during our Heritage Month. And then there was pressure for us to make sure that was available externally. Very, very difficult process because, again, some pushback inside saying like, no, this is not intended externally. But after a lot of fighting, internal fighting and like voices and saying, hey, this is where we are and this is what we need to do. And it might not be what you're used to seeing, but this is what we put out there. And so we were able to get that public. So it's now on YouTube. And then we were able to kind of share our process with our LGBTQ employee resource group, our Latinx one. So then they all each have their own too. And so very proud of that.
Awesome. And thank you everyone for sharing. I just want to, give a round of applause for you guys, but before we go into the Q&A, but yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so we can open the floor up to anyone that has any questions for our panelists. I think we can share the mic. Harry.
First, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. I'm Harry, part-time MBA student at Anderson. My question is about, so let's say you compete for a promotion at work with a coworker who is not Asian. In the end, that the person got a promotion, but you didn't. So how do you deal with the thoughts that I didn't get this promotion, not because of my race, but because of my ability to get?
I can take a crack at that. So that's a tough one because that's obviously a very uncomfortable conversation to have. And naturally you have a lot of thoughts go through your head. And I think that's okay. You have to kind of let it work your way through the system. Because I went through something similar for my own promotion process. And what I learned from it is I have to learn how to play the game, how to actually ask the questions. It was, I was born in America, but both of my parents were from China. So everything I ever heard growing up was whoever works the hardest, studies the hardest, gets the best grades, will get the best jobs, will make the most money, get the promotions, etc. And that's just not how it works here. And it took that reality check of I wasn't even considered for that promotion. So it forced me to start asking like, okay, so I need to start asking these uncomfortable questions of, well, why wasn't I in the process? And the response was, we didn't know that you wanted it. And I guess partially, I learned that was partially my fault because I never bothered to ask the question or to put forth my own qualifications, try to go through my own process of self-promotion. So that was a big takeaway for me learning about that. And, it, again, very uncomfortable, but I also asked the question, so does me being Asian put me at a disadvantage? And, naturally everyone, especially at that level, gets really defensive, but it's important to ask that question so that they start to get a little bit of self-reflection of maybe they start wondering, oh, were there some biases that may have gone into that process? Because inevitably something so subjective has biases. So I think just being bold and being willing to put yourself out there and ask the questions is really important.
Very loud if necessary.
If you're asking questions and could use the mic so the folks on Zoom and we could pick it up on the recording, that would be great.
Awesome. So my question is about emotional labor. You all touched on something that is very hard to deal with, especially if you are being asked to respond to a hate crime or asked to put together a statement. So how do you balance the need to kind of protect yourself and deal with and process it on your own or with your community against the immediate kind of gut reaction to come to you first?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for you. I was so burnt out. I did not take care of myself. Like that was like probably the worst health period of my life, like 2021, just trying to juggle all of that because you do become inevitably that go-to for questions from leadership. They don't know what to do, so they come to you. I was getting like calls at like 7 a.m, like what should we call this? What do we do about this? Like midnight, so I wasn't sleeping, gained a bunch of weight, like all this was just binge eating. I did not know how to separate. And it took, mentors to say like, Holly, you need to take a step back. And I couldn't step back during that time, to be honest, because I felt like there was just so much that we needed to do. But being able to kind of offload and delegate work and have a team to do this with and say like, hey, can you please take this or can you please do this or we'll work together? That was just critical in kind of getting through. And then I think once I reached the point where I felt like, we're kind of in a good place. I was starting the executive MBA here. I was like, all right, I'm shifting off this role. I'll become more of an advisor consultant, but we'll take someone else in this co-chair role to be kind of like that go-to person. And it's just what I needed to do to maintain that separation, because otherwise it's hard not to kind of carry the weight of the world on your shoulders and feel like you need to be the one to solve every problem and answer every question. Like I was at the point where I had to tell people, I'm not a company spokesperson. I don't know what they want. And then, just to balance that communication was so difficult. So I think to the point of just balance, I don't know how, like I need some tips on that, but you just need to be aware of it to when it's happening. Because I think when I recognized it, it was just so late in the game where I was getting panic attacks, like anxiety, therapy. And I was like, this is taking such a horrible toll on my health to do this unpaid work on top of your regular job, on top of other things that you need to do. So even though it's, a passion project and you care so much about it, I think you just need to make that time, however you do so, to take care of yourself.
I would just add, so I got some really good advice from a friend of mine. I was going through the same thing with Asian hate crimes and trying to do DEI post George Floyd's tragic murder. It just seemed like I was in this tornado and hurricane. But a friend of mine said, you know what? A lot of this stuff is systemic. And she said to me, it's taken years for it to get this way, like this bad. So it's not going to be repaired in 3 months. And so ever since I heard that, I just was able to take a breath and realize, hey, you know what? It took a long time for this to become this way, and the repair job is going to take time too. So I need to invest in my self-care and have support and make sure I do healing things. I in between calls, I don't know if you have any just even like specific practices, but like when I'm on a call and it's very disturbing, I like come off and I like go in the backyard and I'll like rage garden. I'll like I'll pull leaves, but it's like a way to compost into the earth. Anyways, whatever it is for you, if it's meditating or like going for a walk, like you just need those breaks, like just specific time. So I think we look at the big picture, but there's also like the small times too that we can find in our day.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I'm James Moody, an MBA candidate in aerospace. So my question is, it's great that people are attending, that people are attracted, but there's also like the people outside of the room. So when we talk about allies, when we talk about, the recruitment efforts, you guys talked about being engaging, awareness and things like that. For the people who aren't here, for people who are outside the room, and they say, hey, I don't attend these events because I don't feel like this is a grievance statement, or, hey, I don't deal with those issues. But then also like the growth strategy piece of it, right? You're not just investing because of historical, grievances, but also, hey, this is an untapped group of people who have a great base of knowledge and intellect that we should be tapping into. How do you balance the grievance statement with a growth strategy to be inclusive to people who are part of that group, but then also people who want to be a part of it, but might be a little bit intimidated to get interacted with that group?
Nicolyn, did you want to take that? I don't know.
Sure. I think maybe I'll sort of try to reframe, like, how do we bring in folks who might be intimidated by, joining and sort of engaging. I think for us, what we've tried to do is sort of like take, opportunities when we are in person and take advantage of the fact that we are a smaller office to sort of have more one-on-one conversations and not, just focused, office-wide on, what does Asians at Bain do, but sort of to get to know our colleagues more on a personal level just throughout the office. And so I think leveraging that, sort of just discussing what, the grievances might look like and sort of like chatting through in a one-on-one level instead of making that person sort of enter a group space where it may be a little bit more intimidating to sort of have to present your ideas or to, not criticize, but to sort of point out some areas that maybe they think they can be improved in a group setting, trying to kind of bring things more in like a one-on-one, maybe a safer space, so to speak, to get the thoughts of a person who, might be newer to the company or might be just intimidated in general by, the group at hand. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's probably what we've seen work well in our office.
I love this question because we face it a lot when we do diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And for those of you that have my book on page 11, I wrote up a whole model around this. So there's two axes. One is their disposition towards it, like their willingness. And the other part is if they're responsive or not. And what I found is that some people just need education and they'll get on board and they're good. They just don't know. Some people, they're resistant, and that's a different camp. So if they're resistant, you have to kind of ask yourself, can I spend the energy it takes to move this person over? And when you kind of map it out, and I have a whole model around that, then you start to target your efforts around people who are willing and maybe just need some support or direction versus people who aren't going to change. And I think the naivete we have around this is we think everyone is going to change, and they're not. So we as people of color or people from minoritized groups, et cetera, need to really reserve our energy and our attention and our focus to areas where we will be best served in terms of how we show up. So that's just my really open and raw advice.
I'll add one more thing to that. So at Disney, we've done these brave space or safe space conversations. And originally they were, we just sent that to our entire employee resource group saying, hey, you want to chat, anything on your mind? We'd open it up for the hour. And what we found was a lot of our allies, a lot of our sister employee resource groups, our Black, Latinx, LGBTQ, and even allies would come and join, and they would say, I'm here as an ally, I just want to listen. And so getting that support, I feel like from all sides, because again, it was like employee, executive leadership, and then just like our Asian Americans, and then also our allied, you feel super supported in this like rectangle, if you will, because you feel like it's a movement, not just for you, but you're supported, and that just increases the momentum of this whole thing. And so that also serves as education to our allies and ones who aren't directly affected by it, that they can listen and they don't feel that they are excluded, by it. So kind of maintaining that welcoming inclusiveness, saying, yeah, we're going to discuss this, but allies are welcome and we encourage you to come and listen.
Awesome. And I want to leave enough time for everyone to grab food. So we'll just wrap up here. Like I said before, Farzana is going to be here if you guys want to ask more questions. She has her, you can buy her book as well here, get your book signed, all that. So I just want to say thank you guys all for coming out. Thank you to our speakers for also calling in and, answering questions and sharing their experiences. So thank you.
And a big thank you to Eric for having us here.
Yes,
The whole
thank
group,
you, Eric.
the whole association. Thank you.